Hello guys, it's Axel here. I hope you've been doing okay. Um, Today I'm gonna do a video, very interesting video, I think. And I'll talk about well, people, especially people in the alternative media, the so-called alleged freedom movement are talking about nowadays, especially in the last 3, 4 years, post-pandemic, with the geopolitical tension happening across the planet, with the war in Iran, etc. You know, because there's a lot of rumors, a lot of things going on. People talk about many things, um, which is the subject of probably the end results of post-war wars that happened 80 years ago, no? Because people they have a very mixed thoughts about it. Some people choose one side of the dialectic, and some people choose the other side, which is the Anglo-American Empire and the so-called the axis of powers, And there is a lot of nonsense and inaccuracy when they talk about World War One and World War Two, which once again they doing they're analyzing the geopolitical aspect and the social political aspect of the human condition within the frame of the system, the constraint of the system, which is exactly what the so-called social engineers people want to blame it on group of people, the Jews, Zionists, Catholics, or the Vatican, Freemason, whoever you want to blame it on, you know? They want to always talk about which side was the lesser evil of the two sides when the point of fact, as I'm going to explain on this video, it's, it's the same people, Okay? It's all planned. They're puppets. Puppets, they are following orders for a very specific end game, which not many people really understand. Okay? And I'm going to try to explain. I'm going to try to explain it and analyze it with as much depth and clarity as possible. Now, with what's going on, especially with Iran and Israel, the United States, with the pandemic, so-called pandemic, okay, what they've been trying to do with the so-called geopolitical crisis, with the conflicts, the wars happening across the world, especially in a certain area of the planet, especially in the Middle East. What it, I mean, folks, is very obvious in Europe as well, the Far East. If you do a little bit of research, not much. If you really do your research and you look in the right sources, okay, it's very clear what they're trying to do. Okay, very clear, very clear. People who use their common sense and do the actual research, it's very clear what they're trying to do. Which is something that many people won't say it. They want to try to divert the attention, which is the creation of a world government. Okay, very obviously. Okay, it's not just one step and that's it. It's incremental steps, incrementing slowly but surely. It's a very stepwise progression that they try to achieve an agenda that has been happening for millennia. What these psychopaths are trying to achieve with this war, what these conflicts and wars across the planet is the creation of a world government, a bloc of superstates by installing fewer puppets on these states, destroying the auto-determination of nations, the so-called national borders, the so-called national identities, destruction of so-called national nation sovereignties, whatever that is, sovereignty, the false sovereignty. I'm going to explain all of this. Well, this is the agenda. It's not just people want to talk about Greater Israel in the Middle East. Yeah, that's one aspect of the was of what they are trying to achieve, which goes much deeper than that. Goes much deeper than that. It's very well organized what they're trying to do. Obviously, a lot of people will find it crazy. People will say, "Oh, that's not what they're trying to do." Okay, yeah, you're gonna dig your own grave. Yeah, and you're gonna one day you're gonna meet the creator, and he's gonna ask you, "What did you do?" You did nothing. Okay, but this is what they're trying to achieve, with the agenda, this cultural Marxist agenda, woke nonsense, the destruction of the nuclear family, the family unity, all of this is planned. They want a society, a world government, typical more of a totalitarian regime, totalitarian government, a world government, by creating a bloc of super states, by destroying the culture of each nations and each continent, by making everybody thinking the same, basically a world with no culture, with one culture, a world government, one culture, one religion, one world religion. Pretty much meaning everybody being the same, have no individual arguments, no any individuality. This is what they're trying to achieve. Basically, a communistic society, with components of a fascio communistic society, but mainly a communistic society, which is the removal of class of a society with class, making everybody the same with no individuality, like I said, which is obvious because for the point of view of the social engineer or the so-called elite, whatever, who want that because it's easier for them to manage the farm because there's too many people on this planet, so they need they need to lower the number of the human population. They have to make the farm more manageable to run properly and effectively. So they have to reduce the human population. They have to by creating a block of super states, destroy the national identity of nation and the culture. So it's easier for them, so they can install fewer puppets and they administer and run the society better in that point of view. So it makes easier to crush any rebellion, any attempt to rebel against the system because there are too many people against few of them. It's easier for them to control, you know? This is what they're trying to do. And they use very deceptive, very, very efficient tactic of mind control, They do wars, which is the big aspect of one, which I'm going to talk about, I'm going to explain. obviously controlling the population through propaganda, distracting with sports and nonsense, entertainment, all that nonsense, and etc. etc. They divide and conquer, put them against each other, race, social class, religion, gender, and etc. etc. Which is a brilliant tactic, you know. Yeah, they have to put certain political ideology against others, nationalism against globalism, communism. It's all slavery, still government, still rulership. You being the fucking slave. That's what they're doing. Yeah. It's been it's been the goal of this ruling class since the dawn of time. They were not able to do that, not because they cannot do it, because they cannot do it too quickly, because people will know this. Okay? This is what they're trying to achieve. And this is what the major world wars were all about. Centralization of power, creating a block of superstates, centralizing more power, destruction of the borders of a certain nations by bringing certain ideology, by bringing certain puppets, certain rulers. They operate through dialectics based on the agenda. They try to achieve one side of the dialectic has to be portrayed as the good guy, and the other side of the dialectic has to be portrayed as the bad guy, the evil guy. When they point of fact, they're both the same side of the coin, same way, the different wings of the same bird of prey, you know, which is very obvious for people who actually done the research to see it through, like World War I. No, the so-called extracted the so-called letter of the so-called extracted letter from Giuseppe Mazzini. Albert Pike talks about it. No, they talk about how these people they plan of creating three major world wars so they can bring on a world government, which is exactly what World War I, World War II, and World War II is all about. You know, these conflicts, which are all planned with them controlling both sides. People making a problem, one side being the evil guy, and the other side as somehow the good guy. Which is planned that way, folks. The dark usage of the Hegelian dialect is very obvious. Obviously, the population who are very foolish and naive, who are incredibly polarized into the dialectic, fall for this shit. And it's very obvious in people in the alternative media. They claim to be awakened who fall for this shit. Let's talk about the example of World War I, World War II. Obviously, a lot of people in the alternative media, with the event that are happening in the Middle East with Israel, with the United States and Iran, and with Israel do, committing genocide to the Palestinian people, you know, and this and a lot of the social political events happening across the planet with the globalism and all of that, with the intermixing of culture and everything, with especially an ethnic group being weakened, you can say. The unity of the ethnic group, which is the Caucasian man, now the so-called white man, uh, through the through the to the problem that happened in Europe with wars, mass migration, which is all planned that way, designed that way. They're doing that with other ethnic groups, black people in Africa, Asian people, Hispanics people in South America and Central America. It's everywhere. But specifically, they want to target the European people, the people with European descent, no, the white people with the European descent, especially which because it's planned that way. You had to weaken and destroy the so-called unity of an ethnic group, so you can manage to get the other ethnic group at the same level as well, because it makes sense for them to do that way. You know, so-called and which makes people, like I said, during World War II, for the agenda that's happening now, so-called social political agenda happening now, it make people believe because of the dialectic happening, believe there's someone like, you know, people call the so-called the madman, the evil guy, man, which he was a puppet, a controller position, like all the rulers are, pawn in the game. To think Hitler to be the so-called good guy. That he was fighting the evil Jew, the international banksters, who are not all of them are all Jewish, but those are Satanists. That's these people are member of this cult, pedophilic, satanic cult that run this planet. Okay, that's what these people, the Rothschild, the Rockefeller, the Morgan family, the Goldman Sachs, etc., etc. The so-called the royalty of Europe, the royal family, the Vatican, etc. Okay, Israel, Saudi Arabia. Okay, think that he was somebody good guy because we've been with the brainwashing propaganda, the so-called Anglo-American propaganda. We've been taught, led to believe that this guy was this so evil guy. He wanted to he took over Germany, and then he was this evil guy. He took over Germany, and somehow he wanted to exterminate all the Jews, uh, took over all the planet, and create a new world order. No, folks, it's not how it works. That's not what happened. Okay, there's not why he took over the country the country of Germany at that time. So it's not the very reason, which is planned that way. If you once again, I'm going to analyze the sequence of the events from World War One, pre-World War One, and after World War One, after World War Two, to the current situation it's happening now, which is all connected. It's planned that way. Okay, they want to achieve a world government by destroying the national sovereignty, the so-called this national identity of nations or countries. They create a block of super states. So you're gonna have to have two sides, okay? You have two sides fighting amongst each other. You have the globalists, people want to call the globalists, okay, who are led by the so-called Anglo-American Empire, the United States and the European countries, Great Britain, the so-called these countries, so the so-called Western society, Western countries, who have a very specific governmental system, which is slavery, government being slavery, talked about before. Government system of slavery called democracy, the liberal democracy, and the so-called illusion of freedom. The democracy simply means a government by the majority rule, demokratos in Greek, okay, where they have a very specific economic system, which is based on the privatization of with, basically with a capitalistic slash chrono capitalistic and incremental socialistic economic system where the government has less intervention and the society and the governmental system is based on consumerism. Okay, with them having government having less intervention, privatizing all the means of production, which this is how the social political, social economic system in the Western countries, okay, the so-called white European countries, okay, more likely in the United States and Canada than the European. European is more a little bit more socialistic. There's a bit more government intervention. It's not all privatized, but most of it is. Okay. And the other side, the so-called East Bloc, the so-called side that the so-called globalists hate, which is planned that way, part of the dialectic with the so-called the true ruling class who are not the politician and not even the bankers control, who are most of the time have a very central and powerful authoritarian figure that controls the entire, that makes all the important decision in the country. Basically, removing the concept of democracy. There's not the majority does not rule, meaning the people. Is the one figure, authoritarian figure who controls everything. Basically, not having a so-called fair, free election, which is the other side of the east part of the dialectic, the east bloc, which is planned that way, who have a who are more social politically a very different um, system or governmental system, which is what, like I said, one authority figure controlling, running everything, and having the means of more a social political a socio-economic system guiding on the interest of the nation, so-called nationalism, meaning the ruling class having so-called sovereignty and control of their own border, of their own borders, their own nation, their own nation. So the social political and social economic system is being gonna be guided with the government controlling, having more intervention on the life of the individual, controlling the means of production and the businesses and everything, nationalize everything. So, and having a more conservative, ultra conservative, more conservative social political system, meaning the more unite, the people are more unite, they're more inculcated and brainwashed, indoctrinated to certain ideas which are more conservative. Okay, they have a very strict family unit. The nuclear family is very powerful, is very intact. The ethnical group is more homogeneous. Their society is more homogeneous. People who the ethnical people who live in that country are homogeneous. You know, it's not really a diverse society in many aspects, like it, like it, like it is now in Europe. With the so-called diverse society in Europe. There's many people from other countries and continents living in Europe for the last 30, 40 years, more so in the last 20 years. And for them to achieve a world government, they need those two types of sides fighting amongst each other. The so-called globalists who want to control and take over and control the country, they don't align to the ideal or how a society or a government should be running that nation at all. And the nation who wants to, and that nation, the ruler of that nation who wants to basically have sovereignty of its own border, control of its own border, and running the society, that nation, with no external influence. They brought basically the farmer of the nation running his farm without no influence, the way he wants it, the way they fit, they see fit, how that nation should be run and controlled, which is planned that way. If you notice through the patterns, the so-called evil guy, I'm gonna be the so-called nationalist. This are gonna be the so-called nationalist, and the so-called good guys are the so-called Anglo-American empire, the so-called countries who have a liberal democracy, so-called democracy, where the so-called have the so-called free and fair election, which is all a farce. The leader are select and they're a member of the cult around this planet. They have an economic system where everything is pretty much privatized with less government intervention. The banks are controlled. It's are privatized, are controlled by the families run this, the banksters, the Rothschild, Rockefeller, Morgan family, Harriman family, Cohn, Loeb, Warburg family, etc., etc. Privatize banks, banking system. The central bank is controlled by them. Okay, the government has no control of the banks or the financial system, the currency. No, so and the other side of that dialectic, the so-called nation, the so-called nationalist nations who have a very strong national identity, where the ruler wants to rule the farm, the nation, without being ruled by anybody other than him, the ruler, the president, the religious ruling class, whoever. Where in that nation they have a very the social economic system, meaning the banking system, the financial system, is controlled by the government. In that case, the government actually control the currency, the financial system. They dictate how the society should be running, and which is basically what people see with the Iran, Israel, the United States, with World War One. No, United States, the so-called Anglo-American Empire, people call the Allies. World War II with Nazi Germany, Germany, Japan, Italy, and the Allies, England. So Anglo-American Empire, England, the UK, well, the UK, America, United States, France, etc., etc., as the good guys, right? Which is planned that way. A lot of people falling for the dialectic because of the polarizing dialectic, because it's planned. What they doing, everything they doing is planned, with them controlling both sides, and based on the agenda they're trying to achieve, which is the creation of a world government. The so-called globalists, like I said, the bloc of nations, they have a certain governmental system, liberal democracy, privatized banks, and everything. Also, mind the good guys, the so-called good guys, is so-called they have a so-called diverse society, the so-called idea of so-called freedom, individual freedom, no, and the so-called the evil guys, no, the so-called nationalists, the so-called nation that have so-called interests of the nation, who are more conservative as a society. Their population is more homogeneous. No, the native people living in that so-called nation, the so-called nation, the nation who have the interest of the nation, the government has so-called interest on the nation, who are more a little bit more conservative than the other side, you know, which is what's happening now, which is planned that way. So it makes sense for them for the agenda that's happening now with the creation of a world government, the so-called nations like North Korea, Russia, Iran, China, who are the more conservative society. They happen to be communist society. If you know, not Russia, but North Korea, China, yeah, with a more communistic social political system. The same political system that a lot of people hate in the alternative media, which is international socialism, communism, which is which is where they see those nations as the good guys. Talking about a lot of people in the alternative media, you know, they don't understand that it's planned that way. It's planned that way. The wars between the two sides, the called American, United States, Israel, the so-called Anglo-American Empire, and the Zionist states fighting against Iran, North Korea, the so-called sovereign nation, which none of them are sovereign. They're all members of the cult around this planet. It's a mask that they're wearing. It's a dialectic. You need two sides, like I said, like I explained before, two sides fighting amongst each other. The so-called evil guys are gonna have to be defeated. Okay, fighting amongst each other. The so-called pre-planned dialectic are not to be defeated. So the global is gonna take over that nation. The government installing a puppets regime there. So they're gonna do what the globalists called Anglo-American Empire wants them to do. They seize the natural resources of the nations, which was all nationalized. The financial system being controlled by the actual government, which is planned that way. No, which is planned away, like World War One, World War Two, World War Three, being planned that way on this very same script. You know, obviously the German, the Hitler being the evil guy, which is it was a puppet control opposition, evil like every government, every ruler, because government is evil, is inherently evil, and it is slavery, period. None of them have the legitimacy to rule and control anybody. Okay? This is what many people in human beings don't understand with all this shit. They still don't fucking get it. They still don't get it. Oh my God, the government is there to protect the rights of the individual. Oh, government, this, the so-called civil servant, that they're somehow employed by the people to protect them, they're somehow working for you. Yeah, you're a moron if you don't get. This is the people who are very low IQ. They bought this the nonsensical propaganda that the so-called slave master, the ruler, who they wanna blame on the so-called people that they think the rulers are the Jews, all the people they don't, all the things they don't like. Okay, they view as moral, which are not moral, with this so-called moral relativistic mindset, are going to be blamed upon. No, if they don't like a certain system, they seem fit, which is actually part of the other side of the dialectic. They're gonna blame it on that ethnic group or certain a group of people, which is which is planned this way. No, World War One, World War Two, uh, with World War One happening with It started with the assassination with the Archduke, Austria-Hungary Archduke Ferdinand. No, he assassinated, and then Germany fighting France and England and the United Kingdom, and by its plan that way, Um, which I'm gonna talk about World War I and World War II with the agenda of Giuseppe Mazzini and Albert Pike, which both of them are members and puppets of the cult that run this planet. They talked about the creation of a world government. They planned and predicted three major wars, world wars, no? World War I, World War II. Like I said, they control both sides. They're both members of the so-called cult that run this planet, which is a cult, satanic cult that run this planet. If it's planned and them controlling with them controlling both sides, it makes sense for them having one side being the good guy and the other side being the evil guy. And the evil guy, the so-called nationalists, the so-called governments who have a governmental system which is more conservative and more nationalistic approach, where the native population is more dominant in that nation, no? Predominant, more homogeneous. They have better treatment there by the government, by the still slaves, because they still have rulers over them. So the slaves are gonna be the evil guy because you're trying to achieve a world government with the block of super state with the block of super nations. And what happened in World War I now with Germany losing the war now, they lost a lot of territories with the Alsace and Lorraine was um, was a historically a French territory, and then they had a war, the Franco-Prussian War in 1871, and they lost, and the French lost that territory to the German. Well, at that time, well, Germany was known as Prussia. They lost uh, they lost the authority through the Treaty of Versailles after World War I. Their army was decimated. The navy, they lost a lot of the territories. They had to pay reparation payments to the so-called Anglo-American Empire nations who are controlled finance by the banking families, who themselves the banking families dynasties are controlled as well. We're gonna get it later in the video who are controlling them, which is planned that way. Now, Germany losing the war during World War I, after World War I with the territories uh, seized, ceded, they ceded the territories. They had to give up their lands and territories. And obviously, the aftermath of World War I, post World War I Germany was a disaster. No, high unemployment, degeneracy, prostitution everywhere, famine. There was economic crisis. Obviously, they lost the war. They had to pay reparation, high debt, high interest rates, and which is planned that way. Obviously, planned, which leads for them the solution for them, the so-called elite around this planet, because it's the sequence of the events that led to that, which is planned that way, led them to install a puppet by the name of Adolf Hitler, who was a pawn in the game. They allow him to be the ruler of Germany at that time, Chancellor of Germany, who is, by the way, is not an who is not a German, was not a German citizen. He was state, well, he was an Austrian citizen from Austria, who was at that time living in Germany, who was a stateless citizen. He didn't have any permanent residency when he was in Germany. Man, how many people even know that? So by them having a very pretty pissed population, the German at that time, not having food and everything, they were they were pissed about it, no? And they needed a very strong lead, so-called leader ruler to fix a lot of the problem that the Germans were undergoing. They were going through post World War One with the Weimar Republic, you know, the Weimar Republic, the degeneracy and all of that, the transgender nonsense and everything, you know. So what would have been the solution? You need a strong, charismatic leader to take over the nations. He was elected, the so-called political party, the NSDAP, the National Socialist German Workers Party, the NSDAP, where that formerly was known as the German Workers Party, was run by some high-level occultists, and one of them known by the name of Anton Drexler, who allow a guy like Hitler to take over the country of Germany at that time. There was the population was on its knees, and they needed an authority, a ruler, a government, a leadership to fix and restore some pride of a nation that was humiliated after World War One, you know, which is planned that way. You know, this is what a lot of people don't understand. People don't want to hear that. They want to believe that he was against the Jews. No, he was not. So what happened is he takes over the the country of Germany, as everybody knows. Within few years, he's able to do some social, economic, and social political policies that was able to fix the country, run the country better and more efficiently. He ended he ended unemployment. A lot of He ended all the worst things, all the bad things. He made the population pride to be German again, and etc. He centralized, they nationalized the bank, obviously the Reich Bank. He ended a lot of the so-called clinics, prostitution, all of that, and all of that, making sure that National Socialism gets fully implemented in Germany, you know, which is what the so-called elite wanted. Actually, people say, no, this is not what the elite really wanted. It was a danger against. No, if you understand what the actual plan, if you understand the bigger picture of all of this, it was planned that way. They allow him to be the ruler of Germany. He was trained the way he was known as an eloquent speaker, great speaker, very charismatic speaker. His way of speaking, very of persuading the crowd. By two men, but one of them is Paul de Vrant, name of known as Walter Stieber, and the other one as Erich Jan Anderson. Okay, who taught Hitler how to speak the way he did. You know, and as he took the country in charge, the ruler of that nation, he was able to end a lot of the so-called. He kept the so-called political campaign promises to the German people, and he was able to do that, which it was planned that way, and they allow him to be the ruler of that nation. Was elected. He ended he ended unemployment. Everybody was working there at that time in Germany. It was not degeneracy. They made the so-called nation is what I call an exoteric Christian, a nation based on the so-called exoteric Christian values, nothing to do with true Christianity. And he was able to nationalize the bank, you know. And this is the part that gets interested. A lot of people in the alternative media, he ended vivisection, he banned Freemasonry, and etc. etc. Um, he advocated for an ethno-national state, no, where the is a national state where the native people or the people who had to who inhabited that nation were had to be ethnically native from that nation by blood. No, there's so many things I want to get into, the world government, all of that, which is a lot of people based on a lot of people in the alternative media based on the agenda that's happening now will see him as the great man. Some of the things he did, he was able to, as a contrary belief, yes, he was able to end usury, which is true. He did that. At the beginning, I was like, I didn't believe that it's very hidden and occulted. This part from the average people, he did that. He was able to lower the high interest rates. Now, does this make the guy a great man? A Does does this make Hitler against the system, against the Jews, against the power that be? No, for the very simple fact that yes, he was able to fix the country and install some pride in the German people, and he was able to install a better system of slavery called National Social in this case. But it was financed by them, by the international banks. That a lot of people call the international Jewry. No, they financed him. If you look at the people who financed him through the steel company, Friedrich uh, um, Friedrich Tyson and his brother August Tyson, who they used to own a Dutch bank called the Bank voor Handel and Shepherd in Dutch. Probably butch the pronunciation. That bank was one of these bank was at a subsidiary bank known as the Union Bank. Okay, the Union Bank, the owner of that Union Bank was owned by a guy. A lot of people probably know him, Prescott Bush. Was the father of the president, United States President George H.W. Bush and George Bush Jr. No, he was the he was the ruler, was the financier behind the rise of Hitler. Okay, those are the same international banks who finance the Bolshevik Revolution, which I'm gonna get in a little bit later. So, like I said, so they allow Hitler to run Germany. They put Hitler in power. They financed him in power, basically, which is something that a lot of people don't want to hear. A lot of people in the alternative media, which is ties in with the agenda of the world government. So they allow him to power, and yes, he was financed by them. Look at the so-called private investment banks. Sorry, the so-called the Harriman family, Edward Roland Harriman, no? Harriman Corporation, the Brown brothers, Alexander Brown and his sons, the Brown brothers, Brown Bros, and the Harriman coming together, making creating a new private bank investment that finance the steel companies, because Germany is one of the biggest producers of steel and metal. And this is how he was able. Hitler was through the policy of rearmament policies. He was able to eliminate the high unemployment. You create a lot of munition factories in Germany. You put a lot of people, they were half work, they couldn't find an employment. Everybody was working there, which is done all this plan by design, making sure that National Socialism gets implemented in Germany. No, was planned that way, and you get people to comply to with National Socialism, financing the military, no, which is planned that way. This is what a lot of people in the alternative media don't get. They want to believe that a lot of the so-called Hitler was against them, the international banks was against the Jews, because they think the Jews are the one who are running this planet. Yes, some of them, those are Satanists, who are members of the cult around this planet. It's a criminal syndicate. The National Socialists, the Nazis, were part of it. People think they were against the system. No, they were not. They allowed Hitler to rule that nation. Pawns on the game, just like Winston Churchill, FDR, Joseph Stalin, that piece of shit of Joseph Stalin and Mao Zedong, all of them, all members, all part of. With him having a very specific purpose, Hitler, to create the excuse to justify the existence of the creation of the so-called Zionist state of Israel. That's why all the rhetoric of the Jews, the Jewish question, there is the Jews around everything. The Jewish conspiracy, the Jewish question is all Jewish. It's planned that way. It's a scapegoat tactic that they use that favors the so-called Jews, the Zionists, sects of the dark occult, that's which led them to the creation of the state of Israel post World War II. Now, the so-called Holocaust, the concentration camp, the Nuremberg laws. Now, the German citizen hating the average normal Jewish people who were not the enemy. The average the average German Jewish person who a lot of them they felt they were proud to be German. Actually, they were not the so-called Jews they was referring to was the so-called ruling class. That the so-called average Jewish Jews German Jew had nothing to do with. That's the whole problem. This is how mind control works, but it was planned that way. So you create the so-called justification. You marginalize the Jews from the so-called German citizenry, so-called Christian, whatever, white German citizenry against the Jews and other ethnic group. So you get them, you try to marginalize them from the society. All of them, you put them in concentration camps. You enact racist laws like the Nuremberg laws, and you expel them. And You try to exterminate them. But what I'm trying to say, the bottom line of all of this is all of this, it's planned, folks. It's a chess game, what they're trying to do. You started with World War One, with Germany losing the war, being humiliated after post World War One, had to pay the post reparation payment, the reparation payments, the debts, and all of that, the degeneracy, the destruction of Germany, Weimar Republic, which allowed a very charismatic leader that they financed called Hitler, part of it, no? Which by surprise, people were, it was financed by them. People want to say no, it was against them. No, it was financed by them. Look at the steel company, the investment, the private investment bank. They financed the steel company. You know, the Harriman family, the Brown brothers, bros, the Union Bank by Prescott Bush, which a lot of people in autonomous media won't tell you this. They won't, the fucking shields that they are. Yeah? You don't say that. Why not? Because it doesn't suit your narrative. They want to come with the revision and nonsense that somebody Hitler was against the Jews, somebody good guy. It was a clown puppets, just Joseph Stalin puppets as well, Winston Churchill puppet as well, pawns the game. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt, okay? All of them are puppets with specific purpose. Hitler, they allow him for the specific purpose to create an ultranationalist society government so they could justify the persecution of the Jews, which would lead them to the justification of the creation of the state of Israel. If you look at the extract of the letter of Giuseppe Mazzini Albert Pike, the Freemason, 32-degree Freemason, which is was planned that way. And you see the sequence of the events that led to a certain end result. So for that to work, Hitler has to be seen as the evil guy, even though in some instance, in some of the policy for a statist or a certain political ideology, it might not seem at all as this super evil guy, but it's still evil, it's still government and rulership. But it was not the super evil guy because the German citizen were pretty much good. Life was a paradise for them as long as they obeyed the dictate of the German government. So people would think it was not because of the propaganda, the so-called Anglo-American propaganda. We've been taught that they were somehow the good guy, and Germany was somehow the evil guy, no? Which is planned that way. The so-called persecution of the Jews and World War II, post World War II, the creation of a lot of so-called globalist think tanks like NATO, military alliance, NATO, the United Nations, which was part of the League of Nations created by the United States and other countries prevent as a peacekeeping mission to prevent major conflicts to happen again, which is planned that way and part of the agenda of world government, which ties in with the creation of Israel post World War II. And yeah, folks, this is what's happening now with Iran, Israel, right? Iran, people talking about Iran being against the globalists, but they're part of it. The so-called theocracy in Iran, which is part of the country of Iran being part of the United Nations as well. And Iran, before having the theocracy, the Islamic Revolution in 1979, okay, used to be allied with Israel and the United States. They had the Shah, they had a monarchy, the Shah. led by led by the Shah, no? Mohammed Reza Pahlavi, his name, used to be allied with the so-called Anglo-American Empire. They were allied with Israel and the so-called Zionist regime and the Anglo-American Empire regime. They were so-called allied with them, and suddenly they're the evil guy. It's because it's planned that way for the agenda of a world government. No, they have to have one side of the dialectic being the evil guy, and the other side of the dialectic being the good guy, based on the governmental system, based on the agenda they're trying to do. So both sides they cannot have the same governmental system. They're gonna be run differently. They have a they're gonna have a very specific social, political, and social economic system. One country, one block of nation, so-called nationalists, the East Bloc against the Western Bloc. The East Bloc, the Skonash, are going to be more conservative, based on the society run with the so-called based of religious values, Christianity, so Christian values for Russia, where the population is homogeneous. The actual native population, population is prevalent there. There is not this intermixing of cultures. Even though Russia has very high numbers of immigrants living in there, and in some aspect is actually even diverse. But mainly the people in the position of power are ethnical Russian, white, uh, which is planned that way. All these wars between the two sides fight amongst each other, which the creation of a world government. They need two sides fighting the war, and like I said, they cannot do it without wars. They need wars for them to achieve a world government. They need order out of chaos, order or chaos in Latin. Order of chaos in Latin means out of the Masonic motto, order out of chaos. Huh? It makes sense for them to have two sides fighting amongst each other, because if the only way they're gonna achieve that without doing war is if the one side of the dialectic agrees to be part of the other side of the so-called nationalist, so-called Eastern Bloc, to be part of the Western Bloc. They call the nation run by the so-called globalists, by the Satanists, which are both controlled by them, to join them. So it would be make sense for Russia to be part of NATO, which which then it would not make sense that they exist, which won't make sense, which no, it will not justify the existence of NATO, because NATO was created to counter Russia and the Soviet post World War II. And like I said, it makes sense for them to make it through wars, because if you do it without wars, like I said, the Eastern Bloc has to be part of they have to join the military alliance, which is NATO. So people will then see it through, and it won't make sense for that, because for them to defeat that nation, for the globalists to defeat the so-called nation who have the so-called nationalists, which is better, the so-called nation where the ruling class have a governmental system based on cultural value of that nation, they're gonna have to destroy the culture of that nation. Therefore, people they're gonna have to assimilate with the culture of the Western society, which then people will not go along that. So they need chaos and war to do that. Because when you have war, you destroy the enemy and the so-called opponent, the so-called enemy. So it's so people will then have as a pre-planned solution this psychopath, the so-called Western Eastern Bloc, to join the Western Bloc. Okay, meaning the Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, to join NATO, that which the globalists, which mean creating a world government. This is what they're trying to do with the wars. They cannot just do it through treaties, because what happens during wars? You have the redesignation of borders. Pre-war border of a nation are different than the borders of a nation during a war and after a war, because you have treaties, you have peace treaties, right? You, you have deals, peace deals and treaties. They're that they redesign the border of a nation based off the outcome, whether the nation lost the war or won the war. So what the plan is, Russia, China, the so-called the so-called evil guys, the evil nations, the globalists, the so-called social engineer who control both sides, are going to be the defeated nations. They're going to have to be the evil guy that the so-called American empire, the Anglo-American empire, has to defeat, go to war with. They have a certain economic system. The banks are centralized and everything, which is planned that way. Okay, this is because it's plan. It's part of the plan for the creation of a world government. The only way they're gonna succeed at doing it is through wars and chaos. They cannot do it without wars and chaos, because for doing that, it would mean one side conceding to the other side, meaning the population, the culture, the people living in one nation, which is in this case the so-called sovereign nation, are going to actually give up their culture to they have to assimilate to the culture of the Western nation, Western countries, which people by then will see it through. Then people will understand that they're all part of it. They're all part of it. They will understand that they control both sides, that it's all bullshit. It's all planned. None of them actually give a shit about you. They saw slavery. They're gonna see through the plan. This is why they have to ultra polarize the two sides, you know. And a lot of people in the alternative media don't understand this. This is what bothers me. You know, they talk about a lot of nonsense, talk about bullshit. Oh, the Hitler was against the Jews. All this revisionist nonsense. Which, in point of fact, he was not. He was part of. He was financed by them, folks. They allow him to be the chancellor of Germany, a Austrian guy who ruled the country of Germany. How's that even possible? Austrian guy. Yeah, okay, you want to say Austria had very similar culture of Germany. Yes, they're both German-speaking country, even though the Germans it's a bit different. Uh, but yeah, so that should tell you everything. So that goes the same thing with the communists. I'm gonna talk about communism in a minute. With Joseph Stalin, who is not a Russian guy, he's a Georgian guy from Georgia. It's Ossetia. That's the region, the Caucasus region, the Caucasus region. So, sorry, called Ossetia. No, the Caucasus region. And yeah, you see, even Napoleon was not a French ethnic or French. He was Italian. He was born in Corsica, which at that time was an Italian island. That the Italians later cede the territory to France. Okay, yeah. Why do you not notice that? Which is planned that way. That should tell you everything already. Even the royal family of England of the United Kingdom, a lot of them are mixed blood. Some of them are from Greece. Some of them are from the Spanish royal family because they marry between each other. No? Some of them are from Germany. And the the German Kaiser William II, he was the actual grandson of the Queen of England, the Victoria the First Queen of England. That was his grandson. Okay, not adopted grandson, actual grandson. So you see that because they're member, you see, people think they're all against each other, they're all part of it. That's the agenda these people are trying to achieve. And like communism, they financed the Bolshevik Revolution was financed by them during World War One. Bolshevik Revolution was financed by the Cohn, Warburg, Loeb, Jacob Schiff families who are all Jewish. Okay, one of the family of international banks so of Jewish origin. We, so that's why a lot of people think that communism was a Jewish plot. But yeah, Alfred Milner, who was not a Jewish guy, but was one of the financiers of the Bolshevik Revolution. Leo Trotsky, no, Jewish guy. Well, a lot of them were atheist Jews, were not even religious Jews, because religious Jews are most of them are usually conservative, are ultra nationalists, the Zionist sect, Talmudic Jews. None of them were religious Jews, were atheist Jews. People want to say, but how can you have an atheist Jews? Because Jews, the so-called ethnic group that we call Jewish Ashkenazi or Sephardic Jews or Hasidic Jews, no, the Seba Jews. Some of them are it's itself an ethno-religious group. It's not just a ethno group. It's like you saying a German is a German, a white German is a Christian or atheist German, but you don't say he's an atheist or the guy from Germany, but he's of a religious persuasion. He can be a Christian or a Jew, or he can be a Muslim is one of his parents, or an atheist, you know. So that's why because Jewish religion, the so-called Jewish group, is an ethno-religious group itself. The so-called Jewish Ashkenazi group. Yeah, but yeah, this is why a lot of people in the alternative media they don't get it. They control both sides. They still don't understand the government. It's evil. They're all part of it. It's all fucking planned and scripted. They control both sides. It's all a ball of whack. It's all bullshit. It's all slavery. None of them give a shit about you. I mean, it should be common sense, folks. And they still don't get it. They still haven't figured that out, which is frustrating. They should be knowing better. And there's a lot of division in the alternative media. All the agenda is happening now with the destruction of so-called European race, which is the race of all human. They try to slave everybody. They try to mainly destroy the so-called national identities and ethnic identity of the European nations because of a very specific reason, which is part of the so-called uh, globalist agenda, okay? And people want to say it's just a Jewish agenda. No, it's not a Jewish agenda. Yes, the Jews, they are the so-called front runner, the figureheads of this agenda, the puppets of this agenda, because that's why you see them, a lot of them, placed in a lot of position of power. They are overrepresented in a lot of position of power because they want people to believe there is the Jews behind all of this. So people will blame them, which is all planned and designed. So so-called white nationalists, so-called national ultra-nationalists, when I say that it's the Jewish plot, part of the so-called Jewish conspiracy, because a lot of the high-level Satanists are Jewish. Not all of them, but a lot of them, yeah. In finance, a lot of the so-called political think tanks, a lot of the political think tanks not really Jewish. It's actually a Anglo-Saxon, to be honest. The so-called corporate banking, media, a lot of them are, to be honest, folks, is Jewish owned. Okay, not to be when I say anti-Semitic, fuck you, but it's true. It's true, folks. But those are Satanists. That's what people don't understand. People want to say it's not. Those are Satanists, with a lot of them being Jewish ethnically, no? But they're member of the satanic cult around this planet. So, like I said, they had to place a lot of the Jews in a position of power, and a lot of the media is Jewish, being majority Jewish owned. BlackRock, no? Which is not the company that runs everything. Yeah, they have some they have some shares in some companies, but it's not the totality of the control system. It's very compartmentalized power structure, very well organized think tank organization, political organization, non-government organization, banks, big businesses, you name it, religious organization, okay, media, entertainment, everything. It's all control. It's all by the way. It's a compartmentalized power structure. Okay, the politician, the rulers, the banksters, the banks who are themselves controlled as well. It's all a ball of work, a work. It's all controlled. It's all planned. This is what a lot of people don't understand. People want to blame a group of people, and like I said, they have to place a lot of them, a lot of the so-called Jews in a lot of position of power. So people will think that it's them, especially the white people, because of the agenda that's happening now in Europe with the so-called diversity, inclusivity, which basically weakens and attempt to destroy the so-called ethical unity, the so-called national identity. And they had to blame on the Jews, the evil Jew, part of the Jewish conspiracy, which leads them to believe that the Hitler was somehow the good guy, was fighting them, was fighting the Jews. He was warning us about the Jews. It's them. When in point of fact, the guy was a pawn of the game, just all of them. Okay, it's all planned, it's scripted. They control both sides. One side has to play the role of the good guy and the bad guy. Okay, one side and the other side the role of the bad guy. One side the role of the good guy. It's very well planned, very carefully planned. All of them being part of it, even the country that they try to take over and destabilize, like Muammar Gaddafi and all of that. Yeah, you want to say Libya was so-called honorable. None of them are honorable nations, but they're still member. They're all part of. They're part of the United Nations. Just The fact that they're all part of the United Nations, one of the globalist think tank that's going to be used for the creation of a world government, that should tell you something, you know? And yeah, so like I said, they actually place a lot of the Jews in position of power, and people would think it's them, and which lead them to think that Hitler was somebody good guy. The overrepresentation of Jews on position of power, but those are Satanists, okay? And the so-called elitists who are Satanists come from everywhere, every single country. So they come from every single national background, cultural background, ethnic background, you know, so-called ostensible religious background. They're from everywhere. Those are Satanists in disguise. They actually wear the mask of the good Christian, the good Muslim, the so-called Jew, and the so-called white man, or the so-called black bourgeoisie, or so-called Hispanic bourgeoisie, or Chinese or Asian or Indian bourgeoisie, but they're also a member of the cult around this planet. Those are Satan. This is what people don't understand yet. Okay? The Vatican, India, the country of India, Israel, Saudi Arabia, China, those are countries run by Satanists. Their entire society is run by Satanists, dark occultists, Satanists. Yeah, some of them are Jewish. Yeah, some of them. Yeah. Is that all of them Jewish? No, it's not all Jewish. Is the representation of them and the agenda favoring the Jewish people in the Jewish state of the so-called Zionist Jewish state of Israel that makes people believe there is the Jews, especially another thing with America and the Anglo-American Empire be be having a lot of the Satanists and dark occultists that run the society or the institution of government and the finance, everything, a lot of them being Jewish. And the country that, the decision run, the United Kingdom and United States, Germany, a lot of the country, having a high level of representation of Jews, favoring the agenda of Israel with the with Israel and with the Palestinian that makes people think that it's the Jews because it makes sense for the so-called the actual real ruling class who are not the finance, who are not the bankers. It goes to up all the way to the religious priest class, dark Luciferian religious priest class. It goes beyond the ostensible religious organizations of the Vatican, the so-called high-level Zionist secret society, or called political Zionist organization, Saudi Arabia, the high-level Islamic organization, okay, or Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, etc. They run this planet. They want people to think that it's the Jews because of the high level representation of them in the position of power, which is planned that way. It's part of the agenda, the world government, because they need an scapegoat. They're not going to tell you who they really are, because if they did, everybody would know they're all part of it. You know, all members: Putin, Kim Jong Un, Xi Jinping. The Ayatollah in Iran. They're all part of it. They just playing the dialectic. They actually play the role of the good guy and the evil guy because this is how they're able to further their agenda for world domination and total human enslavement. They cannot. They're not just gonna come and tell you that it's planned. So one side has to play the role of the good guy, the other side has to play the role of the bad guy. This is what a lot of people fail a lot of people in the alternative media who are all statists. They believe in the illegitimacy of government. It has no legitimacy to exist. I'm gonna do a very detailed video about why government is slavery. And the people don't understand. They fall for these dialectics or plan. They don't get the whole picture that it's all slavery, it's all government, it's all bullshit. None of them give a shit about you. It's all propaganda, it's all slavery. It's a big cult with different, very well organized cult, satanic, dark Luciferian cult, secret society, fraternal orders, think tank. They control the council, the advisory councils, the political think tank, okay, the financial system, the bank, central banking, everything, everything. It's all controlled by them. Okay, when I say it's the Jews, no, not all, not just the Jews. For yes, some of them are Jewish, but those are Satanists. Okay, for example, a lot of the people want to say all the family, all the financial, all the international banksters, all the banking dynasty are all Jewish. Not all of them, folks. Not all of them. For example, the Morgan family, the Harriman family, Stanley family, Schroeder family, the Harriman family, like I said again, Brown brothers. They're not Jewish. They're non-Jewish. Then none of them are Jewish, but the high level, the part of the one of the family who own a lot of the financial institution, the central bank across the world, across the planet. It's a criminal syndicate. It's a you need to think of it of a big criminal syndicate. Is think of it of a mafia, very well organized mafia. The mafia, the so-called mafias are the so-called mafia. They control the drug cartel, the prostitution, the human trafficking, everything. A lot of them are members of the cult around this planet. They control that as well. This is what people don't understand. It's all part of it. It's a big cult. It's a big club, and you're in it. Like the legendary George Carlin used to say. Okay, and this is what people don't understand. And yeah, they don't fucking get it. Yeah, people are very foolish and naive. And yeah, this is what people don't understand. And unfortunately, hey, people are very naive. They don't get it how sophisticated the system of slavery it's what it is. Government, banking, everything, media, police, military, every institution of government control, religious organization of all three major religions. It's all part of the cult around this planet. Very well sophisticated. A lot of people in the alternative media they want to buy in this so-called white Christian or black Christian or whatever so-called rhetoric, you know, so-called white Christian nation, national nation, which are bullshit. So-called Jews, Zion, all bullshit, all nonsensical. Those are Satanists behind all of this. This is what people need to understand. This is the agenda they're trying to achieve. It's a creation of a world government. People want to get offended, get as offended as you like. They control all of it, and they are winning. Unfortunately, people don't understand any of this. They're very foolish and very naive in their approach, how of understanding how the world really works. That's why the guy like Hitler has to be seen as to be portrayed as the evil guy. He was a controller position. He had to play the role of the evil guy because the system, the so-called ruler, the elite, they are telling you that he was evil. Some of the things he did. but it was planned to be that way, to be the role of the evil guy, because him being the evil guy, it justified the existence of the state of Israel, no? And he signed in the agreement, the Avar agreement, something that I forgot to mention earlier. He signed the Avar agreement, one of the agreement that he signed in 1933 after the so-called declaration of war by Judea, but that was not a declaration of war. It was a Jewish boycott of the Jews community demanding the international community they boycott of German goods. The, that the German governments so view as a declaration of war, which led them to negotiate an agreement between the Zionist Federation of Germany, organization in Germany at that time, uh, by uh, by the Anglo-Palestine Bank and the directive of the Jewish Agency. They allowed a lot of the Jews to emigrate into what we at that time was known British Mandatory Palestine. Okay, was known as the British Mandatory Palestine. And so when we people talk about the Palestinian genocide committed by Israel, Hitler is very complicit to this. He signed an agreement that allowed them to the so-called Avar agreement that allowed a lot of the Jews to emigrate in so-called at that time was not British Mandatory Palestine, then what we call Israel. People don't know this. They're fucking dumb. They haven't done their homework. They haven't done their research. They haven't drank deeply enough. Okay, you need to drink the fountain of knowledge deeply. Don't drink. Don't half-ass your knowledge because you don't know. They taste a little bit of knowledge and they think they know everything. They know shit. Okay, the bunch of know nothings. A lot of them in the alternative media. They should keep their fucking mouth shut. And unfortunately, they don't have any resistance from nobody because a lot of them in the alternative media have been brainwashed in this to believe that Hitler was somebody good guy, the so-called revisionist nonsense. When you point the fact it's all planned, they try to create a world government. Yeah, the the agenda of the greater Israel is part of it, but it's not the totality of that. This is what people don't understand. Okay? And it should be common sense. You need to do your own research. Okay? Another thing I forgot to mention when the so-called financial institution, a connection with the financial institution with Hitler, Germany, the Nazis. No? The president of the Reich Bank, Yamar Shacht, who actually through his economic reforms um, allowed Germany to reflourish, to flourish the economy, the German economy to flourish again. He did that. He was the president of the Reich Bank, no, this German central bank. He had the connection with Montagu Norman, one of the governor of the Bank of England. He was Montagu Norman was the who aided the transferment of the gold to the Nazis when they seized Czechoslovakia. You know, World War II, all of that. It's all planned. It's all interconnected with each other. They're all part of it. They're all friends with each other. And the fact that a lot of them, the Nazis, were brought here through Operation Paperclip, uh, Operation Paperclip, through the humanitarian aid corridors, no? The Red Cross, the Rat Lines, Alois Udall, the Austrian bishop. A lot of the Nazis were brought in South America, you know. There's so much to talk about all this, which I'm probably gonna do another video to explain all of this in depth because there's so much things to do to talk about it, you know. This is what they're trying to do. This is what people don't understand. It's all a ball of wax, all planned, controlled, all pawns the game. A lot of people don't want to hear that. They get offended when you tell them that. And you need to explain that to them as well. So slavery, folks. This is what I wanted to talk about: world government and world wars. Okay, the three major world wars are all planned. Okay, for the creation of world government. Like I said, there are two sides of the dialectic. One side of the dialectic have a specific governmental system, which is more liberal, a neoliberal system run by the Western country nation, you know? And yeah, more neoliberalism and with a capitalistic economy where everything is privatized, especially in the United States. And the other side of the dialectic, the so-called Eastern Bloc, the so-called evil guy, are somehow more um, conservative, which are conservative, you know? More right wing, and more nationalist approach. The more nationalist the government tend to be more nationalized, which is a bullshit dialectic. All nonsensical, all slavery, all government, all authority on man, coercive authority, which is all immoral, which is all slavery. As this is what people in the authority media should know better, but they fucking don't. Anyway, this is what I wanted to talk about, folks. I hope you gonna watch this video and comment on this video. I want to hear your comment. I want to hear what you think about. I think it's a great subject. It's very important because it talks about the suppression of human rights and human freedom. No, how government should not exist at all. The government is immoral to begin with, and people don't understand. And a lot of people in the alternative media are very asleep. They think they're awake. They think they understand, but they're not. They're very asleep, sadly. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about the video. I hope you like it. I'm gonna see you next time, guys. Have a nice day. Have a good evening. Bye.